I'd like to welcome everybody here to this meeting of the Board of Commissioners here on March 18th. It's good to see Commissioner Williams back after everything else going on with him. He's going to try and last as long as he can, and then he heads out, so you'll understand why. But I'm glad to see him back here. And Commissioner Moore is, as the best I know, is out with a family member who's critically ill. I say critically, that's very ill. So she might show up here in a little while, so that's where it is. So I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order, and before the invocation, I'll ask Commissioner Holden to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone stand, please. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for the day. We thank you for your mercy, your grace. We thank you for your many blessings. And Father, tonight we just ask, as we're gathered here together, that we look to you and follow that you place in our hearts, Lord, of the decision-making, Lord, that we must do. We thank you, Lord, for the privilege and the freedoms that we have in this nation. We thank you for those that are serving in harm's way, that we might maintain and keep those. And Father, we ask this hour for the many that are in distress of heart, mind, and soul. And that, Lord God, you just continue to hold them close and help them in their challenges. Now, Lord, just take this time as yours and use it to your glory. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd ask a motion to entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda, please.
So moved.
We have a motion. Second. Any discussion? Ms. Clerk, it'd be a good thing to acknowledge since we
I think it's two.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All approved, signify by the hand. All opposed, by a sign. Thank you. This time, we'd ask for a motion for the approval of the minutes for workshop meeting and regular meeting of February the 18th, emergency meeting of February 26th, special meeting on March 4th, and March 11th.
Motion.
Have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All approved, signify by the hand. All opposed, like sign. I would also like, I should have done this at the very beginning, to remind everyone present here that we'll be reassessing the regular meeting tonight in order to hold a public hearing at, it says 6 a.m. and I'm not going to be here. 6 p.m. at 6 p.m. I just now noticed that, Ms. Clark. 6 p.m. as advertised for the acquisition of property. So we'll be doing that at 6, no matter what's going on. I need to do that we can have that public hearing. This time we'll recognize our finance officer, Rebecca Garland, for our finance report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, got several items today, but hopefully it'll go pretty quickly. First item on my discussion agenda is our financial highlights. And for the second month in a row, if you look at page 1, it's highlighted in yellow. I'm pleased to announce that our general fund cash balance is still above $5 million. We're at $5,110,358. We have dropped somewhat. Last month I reported us at $5.464 million, so we have dropped, which is, unfortunately, we're in that magical time of the year when we're going to begin seeing the slide downward. However, I was looking at the transit facility grant. If you'll recall, that is a reimbursement grant, and the state still has about $265,000 it's owed back to us. So we'll be able to boost our fund balance back up for that amount. We also had some pretty large expenditures this month that pulled it down. We paid one of the payments on the transfer station. We also went ahead and paid the timber, U.S. Forest Service timber receipts out to the schools, and we also paid the second half of the 1 cent millage rate that had been set aside for the schools. So we made some pretty large expenditures this month, which negatively impacted cash, but we're still above the $5 million mark, which I'm pleased for. This time last year, we were at $4.7 million. So we have continued to make strides in that area in maintaining and boosting our fund balance. If you want to turn to page 2, I meant to highlight this, and I apologize I didn't. This is our tax collections. Our total tax collections for real property for the month of of February were $155,000. They were just a slight bit higher at 152 this time last year. Our DMV dropped a little, it was 16.5. This time last year was 18,000. I do know that the tax office has been really, really busy doing garnishments, debt set-off, and attachments this past month. Christy and Tawana brought over a stack of envelopes, I swear this high, where they were sending those notices out. So they are very busy in trying to make our collections. And if you want to flip 2 more pages over to page 4, you'll see that we have collected in real property taxes $4,913,000 for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 13, as opposed to last year we had collected $4.9 million, or a little less than 4.9, $4,858,000. Our DMV, we've collected $181,000. We're about $55,000 in collections above this year in real taxes and $7,100 in DMV. So we're on the plus side. And our tax collection rate through the end of February was 94.44%, which is actually a little higher than our for the full year end last year of 92%. So we're working really hard to get those taxes collected. One thing that's driving that percentage up, though, because I want to be fair, is that our total levy was lower this year because we've had a lot of property that goes into conservation easements and PUV, present use value. We had more of that type property go into that section this last year, which has pulled our levy down. So I can't say it's all collections, and part of it is that we have had a lower levy. If you want to flip to page 5, our revenues for the month of, this is cash collections for the month of February, were $902,700. We spent $1,075,000, so we have had a deficit of $173,000. This time last year, our deficit for the month of February was $252,000. So overall, we had a deficit, but it wasn't as bad. And as I was relating to Mr. Edwards earlier, we're on the slide like we've been on. You know, we're always going to a slide on our surplus starting in February through June. We usually have to spend out more than we take in, but the slope isn't as slippery, at least to this point. We've had, if you want to flip to page 6, our year-to-date surplus is $2,398,000. This time last year is $2,250,000. However, just keep in mind that the state still owes us about, I think, $250,000, which will come back in and add in. We're recognizing all the expenditures on the transit facility. We haven't recognized all the revenue yet. So that should be coming in. I'm hoping we've got all the state paperwork in for the additional funding for that from the feds about 3 weeks ago, so I'm hoping that that'll be released pretty soon. If you want to flip to page 7, our sales tax, we collected we just got in the other day for the month of March, which is January receipts, $113,000. We're still at a plus. We've collected $70,000 more in sales tax revenue than we had this time last year. And that's really helped us because we've lost funding in other areas. You know, our PILT's a little lower. We're going to be losing 5% on our U.S. Forest Service PILT we know of, which is about $16,000 this year. And so we're losing some federal funds, and so this is going to help us. And so I'm very thankful to see that that's a positive variance. Any questions on this so far?
Did we get final notification on that amount bill?
Just that email.
Just the email.
Yeah. It'll probably be May. They usually release those numbers early May, and then actually release the funds the end of May, early June. So right now, it's what the email said, about 5.9%, I think, was the.
That was from Ryan Davis at NAPA.
Yeah.
And I hope that that's not going to be the case.
Yeah.
Because there's been moving the foot for a long
Yes.
time just to do away with it.
Yes. Yeah. So that's got me a little worried. So I'm very thankful when I see those sales tax numbers coming. The second report I've got is just our budget analysis through the end of February. And most all of our departments, you know, and once again, I've been reporting this all year, their budgets are tight, but most all of our departments are staying within budget. The only ones that I'm foreseeing some overages are the ones I reported on last month. The election board, we had some extra expenses with the primaries. Recreation had some extra expenses. The jail, the inmate medical is killing us this year. Last year, we came through pretty unscathed with medical expense. This year, we've had at least one helicopter ride and several hospitalizations. As you know, we are using the Gilspar. They try to do some negotiations with us, and we're beginning to see some of those claims get processed. Savings are so-so, but we are saving a little. But it's just the nature of the beast. It's just how it falls.
Is that saving in hundreds or maybe thousands?
One claim we saved maybe $1,200 on. I think that was the helicopter ride. Some of the hospitalizations were saving $600-700. It's not huge, but right now I'm counting pennies. I'm going to really take a strong look at that system at the end of this year to see if we're getting any. I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of getting the feel that we locally can do it just as good, you know, unless these next 2 or 3 claims that are still pending. I'm thinking we negotiate about as good as they are. The problem we have, I'm seeing, is that the one particular facility that they go to, they pop it to them, but they're not in their network, and I'm finding if they're not in their network, there's a whole lot less ability to negotiate. They have saved us, but it's not, there again, I'm thinking we can do just as good, but ours our judgment to the end of the year.
One comment to that of the inmate medical, you may be already familiar, but with the work with NCACC, I know that Greg and
Yes.
some of the, you know, they work together, and they actually have legislation on the floor.
Yes, and I got to see a draft of it the other day.
Yeah,
So
so
we're
that-
got our fingers crossed.
Yeah, so, you
On
know,
that.
Greg had a part in that, he mentioned that, and all of a sudden, here it goes. You know, it's in the General Assembly.
Yes.
And what that basically does, and I think you can probably explain better than I can about the Medicaid issue,
Yes.
is that they can be charged, and then there's a cap on that per Department of Corrections numbers,
Yes.
which would, I don't know if it would be drastically reduced, but it would help.
I think where it's going to help the most is that I get the feeling when I look at some of these bills that hospitals and facilities know that we're the county and they pop it to us. You know, where a typical patient might get, may not have a CT scan for a specific thing. Here we go with, here's a CT scan, well, let's just add this. And I think this is just my opinion that some charges are coming through that are not necessary.
I think all the counties are seeing that.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
that-
And I think this is going to help with
Foundation
that.
for legislation.
And I've been hearing it down to the point of certain positions.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. And, you know, what we try to do on our side, if we can, is we know that there's specific facilities that really take advantage, and so what we try to do with the jail is to try to get them to steer clear of those facilities if at all possible. The problem is if you have an inmate housed out of county, they may not know that they're going to that specific facility, so it could be a problem. But just looking at our overall budget, we're at about 61% usage of our budget. Through February, if we were fully using our budget, it'd be about 66, we've used 61. So I'm pleased, you know, I mean, everybody's really still on the mark of trying to save money. And even though the department managers know that we've been able to accumulate cash, they're not letting up on what they know their responsibility is. And I'm really pleased with that and very thankful to them that they don't want to just go, well, we got money, we can spend it now. Any questions on the budget? Okay. I've got 2 budget amendments. Budget amendment number 17 is just to recognize the ADM money. If you'll recall, I think it was last month, the schools came with an application to put upgrade the security this camera system in the schools, and requested to use $111,117 in ADM money. I think they just have turned that application in, so that money will be coming from the state. It goes through our books. It's a pass-through, so we just have to recognize that the money will be coming in and then it'll flow back out. And then budget amendment number 18 relates to the purchase of the vehicles. The ambulance, I've rounded these up. The ambulances are going to cost, the ambulance is going to cost around $90. One of the vehicles for emergency management will run about $35, and that one actually is paid by grant money. And then the sheriff vehicles will run about $125,000. So I'm anticipating having to borrow $220,000. And if you'll recall back in the summer, I said we got about $15,000 for these grant monies that we've held forward. I'm pulling them back in. Okay, so we're looking at financing $220,000 on those.
New ambulance should be here in town, it's not already got.
It's on its way.
There
It was in
is.
Canton.
Work session, you said by Wednesday.
Yeah.
I think
Should
it's
be
already
on.
in Canton. What is it?
It'll be here tonight.
Is it here?
Yeah, it'll be inspected Wednesday.
Oh, that's right, that's
It'll
what.
be on the road.
Yeah, inspect, they're coming to inspect it.
They went out at 5 o'clock this morning, Wednesday.
Well, good.
Okay, my next item is, we've had some changes in our Medicare rates for EMS. As you probably are aware, about every 2 years, Congress comes in and realigns the Medicare rates, and they have. And it's current practice for providers to set their rates generally based on what the Medicare allowable rate, and about 130% above what the Medicare allowable rate, because Medicare and Medicaid obviously pay a lower percentage of a bill. And so EMS management consultants did an analysis for me, and I've highlighted what they are recommending as changes. Right now, if you look at the first line, it's an ALS, is an advanced life support run. Current charge is like $310. Now, these are in-county rates, so obviously our out-of-county would be different, but we just got the in-county and we would adjust the out-of-county appropriately. They're recommending that we go to $404.12. An ALS E rate is currently at $490. They're recommending $639.85. Basic life support UNE is $258. They're recommending going to $336.77. BLSE $413 to $538.82. ALS 2 is $709 to $926. And then down at the very bottom, currently we're billing $12 per mile. We're super rural, so we get a higher rate. They're recommending going up to $13.96 a mile. You don't have to take any action tonight if you want to study these, but for certain, for the coming fiscal year, they're saying that we could go ahead and implement these rates now, but for certain, you want to study these for budget as well.
Now, explain this to me as to the Medicare allowable rate. It just doesn't make sense to me in the climate we're in that they would go and increase those.
Well, it's interesting. They increased it, it's like a 0.8%, and then they pulled it back down somewhat with sequestration. So this is the net increase after sequestration and all these other things. So they would have gone higher had it not been for the sequestration. So it's whatever you guys want to do.
I mean, if it's an allowable rate, I mean, that's what you do.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
that's
really,
what I
if we're billing the lower rate, they're paying us on the lower rate when Medicare would pay more.
Okay.
So we're losing money by not
By not
increasing the rates to those allowable.
How does that affect the Medicare people who use this? Do they have to pay more, or is their bill paid entirely?
Their bill, they have their copay and deductible, which is set each year.
Which if we raise the rate, then that they pay a higher copay, is that correct?
I'll be honest, I don't know.
You know, they-
I think their copay is set no matter what.
What about the 80/20?
If they have the 80/20 option.
Okay,
Yeah.
Medicare B, I mean, I I know there's $100 deductible,
Yeah.
I know that. But on 80/20, it would cause our Medicare.
If they have that plan,
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah.
Was that what you were thinking about, Mike?
Yeah, because, you know, you see the allowable rate on it, but then too, if you go with a certain stuff, you have to have supplemental, right?
Yeah.
For the $100.
Which pays the copay and the deductible.
So
If they
on
have supplemental.
80/20.
Some people can't afford this.
Yeah. The other side of it is the Medicaid, you know, you don't bill anything for Medicaid, and if we're billing less than the allowable on Medicaid, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot, because we're having a larger write-off because we're not billing the amount that's allowable.
But
So,
is it not their place to get, it's not our place to get the $100 or whatever?
No.
it's just part of the, yeah, when they bill it, like they bill Medicare, then if the person has a secondary, or what do they call it, I'm sorry, my mind's.
Medicare supplement.
Supplement, then they turn around as quick as they get the Medicare EOB back, they bill the supplemental.
Well,
And,
that doesn't affect us,
right,
what they have to pay extra.
It'd affect you if you didn't have a supplement.
it would affect the person, the
But on the
patient.
county to collect that part.
Right, it's up to them, they collect, you know, they go out and bill but of course, if the person has not met their copay and deductible on other things, then we would bill the patient for the copay and deductible on the Medicare.
Right.
The Medicaid, whatever it is what it is, and we don't get anything
Right.
above and beyond that.
Okay. And you have this as an action item for tonight?
I do if it's your desire. If not, you can hold it over and study it for the next commissioners meeting. Okay? And the last thing on my discussion, which is also an action item, is if you'll recall last month, I was telling you about the KIP, which is that big wide printer that's in J.R. Rogers' office, and that's the printer that he prints the cadastral tiles and the plats and whatnot. And I was telling you last month that that machine has been under a lease and was under a fair market value lease for 5 years, and that's actually a machine that should last another 5 years if nothing happens to it. I talked with the vendor, and I said, well, tell me what the fair market value buyout is, and option one is if you decide to just keep the machine we've got, which I talked to JR today, he said it's perfectly fine. He's only had one service call on it in 5.5 years. He said that doesn't mean we'll tear it tomorrow. We can buy it out at $5,631. Now, we can purchase a maintenance contract, and the number I gave you is just, I pulled it out of here, and it's actually going to be more than that. Maintenance contract would probably cost between $75 to $100 a month, if that much. That would include toner, paper, service, repair, okay? Option two, we could get a new kit and turn in the old one, which in my opinion, turning in an old one,
Giving away good machine.
we're giving away a real good, nice machine. You can purchase a new kit and turn in the old one for $16,500. Or you could lease a new kit and tie in and keep the old kit for $577 a month, which I would not advise. Interest rate on that's 23%. Total cash flow on that would be $35,000.
That's a consumer.
Okay? Now, I could go to the bank and borrow the money at 3% to purchase. Or I could purchase the old kit out and I could buy a new kit, put one machine, the old kit in the building inspection office, and have a brand new kit in the mapping, which if you wanted to do that, I'd be fine with it because we're going into reval. And we're going to be really hitting that machine really hard. And so the older machine, we may have a little trouble with it, we don't know. For $22,168, I could finance it locally if I wanted to finance it, or I could just buy it.
What about the maintenance contract on two machines?
It'd be probably $150 a month.
Okay.
If I want to have a machine and building inspection and a machine and mapping, then I just buy the lease out. If it were me, I'd buy the lease out on the old, keep it. And and after talking with JR, he was like, we'd be crazy to turn that machine in because they will take it, we'll pay the $5,200 and then they'll turn around and resell it for 10. Because you don't lose a lot of value in those machines. But it's entirely up to you. You've got no matter what, we could just buy the one we got, buy it out, and then if it went down, we could turn around and buy a new one. Later. It's up to you guys. My opinion is I'd hate for you to turn something in that you've already put so much money in, and it still be a good machine.
And we know what they need.
And it's just been money down the drain. And you are gonna need it because of the rebound.
One question I wanted to understand why we would need two machines. I don't know, two machines.
The only reason, and JR told me today, he said, I am perfectly fine if you wanna just buy that old one out, I'm fine. He said, I need you to make a decision because he said, I don't wanna set everything up to print all these plats and things for reval, then get a new machine and have to reset everything up and have to redo everything, which is, it doesn't make sense from the logistical side. His thought was, if you want, he said, I don't care what, he said, I'm fine with keeping the one we've got and just getting a service contract. And he said, the only reason that if they wanted to get a new one, to have one in building inspection is it would help David to be able to run the plats and things he has to run, and it would be available to him without David having to run. He could just do it, it'd be more of a convenience thing for him.
What kind of volume does he have on that? Any idea?
He said that he runs on the average, they look at it in square feet, he said he runs on the average probably 750 to 1,000 square feet a year on a non-reval year. Probably quadruple that in a reval. So, I just need to know what the board's desire is, and if you want me to, whatever you guys want to do, I'm fine with. But I may be coming to you in 2 years and say we got to buy the new machine. You don't do anything today.
Hopefully the old one's still running.
We hope. He feels like it'll go another 4 or 5 years.
So if we buy it out, just buy this out at $5,600, then we could go with the service contract and say it runs about 75 to 100. Is that that's a month? Per month.
So that was two machines, wasn't it?
It'd be about $75, I think, a month for one, about $150 for two. And that covers the toner, it covers everything with the paper, which he says he maybe gets 2 rolls of paper a year, which is not really expensive. I just can't see leasing it. I just don't think that's good business.
I mean, JR knows the machine, and if it's just for convenience sake, I don't know. But, I appreciate everything Dave's doing. I think I'll go with buyout.
Just buy that?
I mean, for me, we're going to make a decision on that. Go with
That
the
makes a lot of
buyout, and
sense.
if you say that we have to go and do it, I mean, we don't lose anything, right?
No. And what we can do is if it were to go down, we can just call them, get a new one.
It wouldn't be a difference.
I mean, if it was to go down, it'd be mortally down. If it goes down, I think it's fixable for another 2 to 3 years. But that kind of pushes that off down the road.
So it's a gamble.
It is.
What do y'all think?
I think we just buy it out.
Just have one?
Yeah, that's what I think.
And then we have to spend the 16, spend the last.
But we'll have some action on this here in a minute. Any other questions then about the gift? Anything else to add, Ms. Carl?
No.
Okay, if we
And
could.
JR and I are perfectly fine with just buying it out.
Okay. All right, then, if the board pleasure, we can go ahead and do the action items for the financial. First of all, two budget amendments I'd like to have they're listed here. For budget amendment number 17, which accounts for the timber sale money that came to, no, that's for the ADM, is that right?
ADM.
ADM monies for the school. That's passed through for $111,170. And then it presented the budget amendment number 18, which balances out everything for the emergency management grant, the purchase of vehicles for the sheriff's department, and the ambulance that we took delivery of today. Do I have a motion? Have a motion, have a second? Have a second. Any further discussion? All approved, signify by the hand. All opposed, like sign. Okay, motion carries there. Next is the rate, the Medicare rate. Is this something that the board would desire to entertain tonight? Or do you feel that we need to have more time to consider this?
Well, I think we've discussed pretty much what we discussed on it, and from Becky's standpoint, it makes sense to increase the rates, although those citizens who do not have a Medicare supplement fee will be paying more on their 20% rate. But when you weigh what we lose if we don't do the increase, then they'll be paying it back in taxes anyway.
Yeah, and we're already kind of a month into this. She sent it to me the other day, but it was effective like the middle of January, so we're already losing some revenue.
And plus, these revenues go back right into the county,
Right.
which, in turn helps us make provision of service. Am I right in that? That's the correct result of that Medicare.
Right.
All right, then, do we have a motion with regard to this rate increase allowable amounts for Medicare? Have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? If not, all approved, signify by the hand. All opposed, like sign. All right, last here for the finance side is the KIP lease. What do we need to do with that? The options are presented by Ms. Garland were to have a buyout. I've lost my little sheet.
Just to buy out the old ones.
To buy out the old lease, or if we want to.
Their machine.
I make a motion we buy a old machine.
Okay, we have a motion that we buy out the old machine for $56.31 and to have the maintenance contract between $75 and $100 a month. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All approved? Give with the hand. All opposed, like sign. All right, does that take care of the finance business?
I just had one more quick item, a couple of quick items was just FYI, we got our funding for 2013-14 for 911. It will be $16,553 a month. We're losing $13.27 per month. That's basically because of our new funding structure. If you'll remember a couple of years ago, they went to last 5 years expenditures. It would have dropped even lower if we had not purchased that 911 system. And plus we paid 5 years in advance on our maintenance contract on that system. It would have gone way lower than that. So I'm not happy with the drop, but it could have been worse.
Okay.
And then just to FYI, we do have, we have to update our agreement with Maximus, who does our indirect cost plan. Same amount as we've been paying for past years, it's $4,000 a year. But I went back and I looked to see how much we get in indirect costs because we do this plan. This coming year, we're gonna get $312,000. So we get 78 times back what we paid to Maximus. That's just some FYI for you to make you feel better when we are at that check. And then Mr. Edwards, I've got just a couple of things I need to get your signature on later, but
Okay.
it's nothing. I'm
Is this
sure.
something that you could leave here? I can leave with the clerk.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just clerk to make sure I do it. And we'll be able to do that. Okay, at this time, we'll recognize Ms. Wanda Hill, the Senior Center meal bid block grant and cost to pay for extra meals through June 30, 2013. Welcome, Ms. Hill.
Hello? This is a deal that's first, you're gonna.
They're in
Raymond, got your knife? Y'all have your knife, Raymond?
Take way up. I wouldn't take it. That's what I told you. Yeah.
This place that I've opened is from Phillips Smoky Mountain Restaurant. $5.38 per meal. Second envelope open bid comes from Melissa Crisp, owner of Stanley Cafeteria located at 60 Snowbird Road at $5.33 per plate. It's the same meal. Thank you, Rick. Third bid is from Lynn's Place Restaurant, and it's in the amount of $5.50 per meal. Again, the bids are $5.38 from Phillips Smoky Mountain Restaurant. Melissa Carver's Cafeteria is in $5.33, and the Lynn's Place Restaurant is $5.50. Have a motion to accept the low bid.
So moved.
That'll be in the amount of $5.33 a plate, and that goes to Melissa Crisp, owner of Stanley Cafeteria. All right?
Congratulations.
Okay. All right. Let me take care of this first. Make sure I get all these put back in the envelope, or my clerk will be great. Please bear with me. Did we get that noted in there? We have a motion, we have a second, right? On that, do we ever have a vote, ma'am?
Yep.
Okay, we have discussion? Okay, all approved? All opposed, like sign. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda. Let's see, what do you have? You have something else? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's all. I was asked to prepare a statement for the commissioners about the end of this fiscal year for people that I have on the waiting list. To see if you guys might want to help fund these people that I have on the waiting list. Kim has got a
Yeah, I think I
letter
thought it
that
was
I,
10.
Yeah, it's a total of $20,411.60 to go through June 30th.
June 3rd. Now, mind you, all 10 of these people have not been evaluated, and they may or may not qualify. I have just had 10 assessments that has been,
So you don't know the qualifications?
don't know if they qualify. I just got them on the way. This is a fully allocated cost of $15.03 for a home delivery,
Okay.
and that's taken into account power.
I personally want to have
Gas.
qualified.
I think it, yeah, we
The
need to do
qualified
that rather
candidate.
than.
Yeah. You understand what we're saying? We'd kind of like to see them who qualifies and then bring us that
And then
number.
we'll make a decision.
Can you do that?
The other one that does qualify need to, and I think we will.
It's confidential. It's not something that I can publish.
Can you get a number though, if it's less than 10, could you bring that number back? Not
Sure.
who.
That's what I'm not asking her name.
Oh, I thought you asked.
Oh, no.
Yes, I can do the
No,
So
assessment.
what it is-
right now.
What we're being asked to do is approve $20,400, not knowing.
Right, and that's also
How
some
many?
that's on the the congregate too.
I,
Got a witness from them too.
my personal self, I don't think that we need to go to 20,000. We need to go one-on-one,
Right.
and when it comes to maybe that 20,000 or more than we can go, then stop, because these people that need need it now, they don't need another study, don't need another this, or another
Yeah,
that.
it take
They
a
need
week or
it
so.
right then, and I'm not saying, I don't think that we need to go and vote, put $20,000 in there, when we might not need, there might not be two people that qualifies, but them two people that qualifies need to
Needs
now.
it now, that's right. They
Not
don't
3
need
weeks
2
or
weeks
3
from now.
months later.
Yeah.
How quickly can you qualify someone?
It takes about a 35-minute assessment, no, no.
Okay, that'd be 350 minutes.
For the home delivery, but I've got
No,
some.
you understand what we're saying on that?
Yes,
So, you know, if we can come up, and by no means would I ask for names, there's just no, I don't have any business.
No, just qualify that.
But just
Number- the
those that
number
were qualified, and you have 10 applicants, is what you're saying. So if we had that figure, then we could work better on the amount that you're saying for the needs for those individuals. Does that make sense? So if that's the board's pleasure, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. If we have that number, I feel more comfortable with voting on it.
it's going to take me a month to come back to another meeting.
We can call a meeting for next week.
We'll call a meeting then.
Or
There's
I
nothing to-
oh, you don't like the
I don't like
vote,
both. Well, I know.
but I can't.
We can address it. If there's somebody going to be in need, we're not going to wait a month. If you can get that information to us, then we'll do what we need to do.
That's what I was asking.
That's-
How quickly can you do that?
Within the next week.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, that sounds really good, one. Appreciate that. Okay. Any other questions
I
for Ms.
have
Hill?
one more thing.
Okay.
Within the next couple of weeks, I have to apply for the block grant for the next fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
So I just need to get the board's approval to go ahead and apply for that grant.
Absolutely.
Go for it.
All right, we have a motion that we go ahead and approve the application for the block grant. We have a motion.
Second.
Have a second. Ms. Clerk, you got the definite name of the grant and all that good stuff?
I do want to get
It's, there's so many letters. Thank you,
HCCBG.
that's what it is. Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? All approved, signify by lifted hand. All opposed, like sign. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Wanda.
very much.
Appreciate it. Okay. All right. Yes. Okay, next is public comment period.
There's no one signed in for public comment unless somebody would just like to speak.
All right, we have, we've got to remember the 6 o'clock deadline on the public hearing regarding the property acquisition. At this time, we have a discussion items. Ms. Clerk, would you like to go through these?
We need to schedule the Board of E&R. It needs to be held in April. So I think it takes a week. And I'm assuming that you guys want to do it as a board and not elect anyone else. So we need to make sure you go ahead and schedule your week in April.
Well, as everyone knows, there's going to be a mention of a change in schedule for the next meeting for next month to the 22nd from the 15th. And that's my fault, and I did ask the board that we're on baby watch for our grandchild coming that week. So is there a preference on the part of the board? That week, the 15th, Monday the 15th through the 19th, is not a possibility to me.
Okay, we have a district meeting for the NCACC in
Yes.
Jackson County on the 10th.
On the 10th. And that will be at 5:30 to 8:30 to 8 p.m. So,
Okay.
You could do it on the same week of our regular meeting. You'd just be meeting at 9 o'clock that morning for the Board of E&R. But you'll still follow through with our workshop at 4.
okay. I have a question then with that too on our schedule. Ms. Garland, you talked about we're going to have some training for budget. Have you come to some tentative date or idea when we need to be doing that?
Well, let me ask you, do you have any idea about how long you'll be out of town?
I'll surely be back by the 22nd, without a doubt.
If we would try and shoot for the last week in April, then that would give us all of May to do budget deliberations, because it's my hope and desire that we kind of have everything to bed by the end of May this year if we can possibly.
Okay.
So
And
that'll give, I was telling Greg the other day, my work, to get some drafting done, and get some things put in place.
Okay.
So that would give you the time you need with your new reading.
Okay, all right.
Because I don't want you to feel stretched by that.
Well, I'm just appreciative that we're able to do this. So the first thing, is it okay with everybody then, the week of the 22nd of April for the ENR?
And do you want me to serve as clerk also?
If
I'll serve
No,
as your
that-
clerk,
I think that needs to be.
not the
done.
Board of ENR clerk, I'll serve as your
I
clerk.
know, and I know that
That's
the
pretty well.
other one is the
Yes.
clerk, but I would like to do that if it's possible. Is that agreeable with everyone that day? And what time frame do we have?
Usually you start at 9 o'clock in the mornings, I think.
Okay. And let's see, some make appointments, and some don't, they don't have to make, yeah, they do. No, they don't.
They usually have them by appointment, but they will take some in
Right.
if there's a law.
Okay, so we'll run 9 AM, and then we did what, 3 times a day?
Till 1, I think, is,
1.
yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion then, we have a motion on that, then for the week of the 22nd of April, and make that from 9 o'clock in the morning to 1 PM. And that'll run every day that week,
Yes,
and that'll be advertised as such.
yes.
Okay, that's a requirement. All right, we have a motion, we have a second, all approved, signify by the hand, all opposed, like sign. So it'll be the 22nd, mark that on our calendars for that, for ENR. All right, and the next was the budget process, and Becky, what we're talking about was I guess you'll do the initial training for the board during that period of time. That is open, public meeting, and wanting to start that on April the 29th. What time of the day do we need to start?
Nice.
I know for the office staff.
10,
10?
until part-time, and then
About
she had to,
Okay, 10 a.m. And we can run to what? Till we adjourn? I know how they do.
And really, truly, it's better to do it after you've done ENR, because that way we'll have a fix on the plan.
Right. And it'd be appropriate for me to speak to how we're looking at it from the standpoint of the pay plan.
Yes.
One of the things we're hoping to help with this, and I know some folks say we take too long with the budget, and I understand that, the way that we were approaching it, from one standpoint, what percentage is it of the budget was?
It's just salaries.
The salaries,
Once we add
benefits.
in benefits, it's higher.
Okay, so there's going to be a little bit of,
Together.
right,
It's
and-
50, right, 50%.
right, and then what we're going to do then is looking at the pay plan and being able to set that pay plan in place and have that in increments and start that period right there on the budget, then we don't have to spend all that time and determination about that. One of the things that we're trying to combat with that is somehow or the other that you just want to give it across the board, which hopefully we'll be able to do for COLAs eventually. But going to say, well, so-and-so needs to get this much, and so-and-so gets that much, and why? What do we have for a reason? There wasn't one. So what we want to do now is to have that set up on evaluations, and we'll be discussing some amendment to the budget,
Yes.
to the personnel policy tonight, with some of this about what we're going to be doing. So there'll be a reasoning for why somebody gets a pay raise or a merit pay or whatever, instead of just going and sitting around the table and deciding that so-and-so should get 50 cents and so-and-so should get 30 cents. And then so-and-so starts a job and they start out what the previous one did. So I'm just laying it out there. There needs to be more of a rhyme and reason. I do not know, I've got to be careful in saying this, is that when the last time the Graham County had a pay plan. And evaluation components already in place. We've been working on this for a year.
Yes.
It's been a portion of the personnel plan that we have in place, and we're trying to fine tune. So hopefully this budget process will not take as long, but this is our first year trying to go through the issue of the pay plan. So hopefully that will help. So we have it set then, we'll go with the budget process starting on Monday, the 29th of April, and run through, hopefully, we go through May. If you're saying you get it knocked out, fine-tuned, that doesn't mean that this board will have to be meeting every day during that period of time, but we will need to meet. Okay, we need to have that in this form of a motion. that we start the budget, or is it just drafted?
It's just your-
Okay.
You'll call the meeting, that's all you do. So.
Okay, we'll call the meeting. All right. then. Okay,
Okay, we have an appointment of Andy Cable to the Southwestern Rural Planning Organization, TCC Committee. This was a recommendation from Bill Gibson for Andy to sit on this board, which I do have in action items on down. Update on the floodplain ordinance, I think Commissioner Eller, Commissioner Holder got to meet with people from FEMA today. Larry Henry touched on it just a little bit in the workshop session, but if they would like to comment a little further for the ones that were here.
you want to do that, Bill? Just give us kind of a brief update of the meeting we had with FEMA today.
I presented the questions, but I got answered, but there was no specific time set to it. However, the guy from FEMA said that they would lift the restriction so people could get insurance short. So maybe these people could get relief. But on the restudy, he said that they would do a study, but he never did set a time to do it. So that's left, God knows when.
And those that you met, I know one of them was Mr. Tim Russo from Region 4 in Atlanta. And then I think it was Mr. Fox, was his last name, also came and visited today to do the required study. We've been waiting since December, and they came today. And so hopefully that'll be taken care of in short order. Mr. Henry, our contact person having to deal with this floodplain ordinance, came and said a little while ago that he actually got a phone call back from these gentlemen about 45 minutes after they left, and said everything looked fine on the 3 sites that were, the only development was in like 3 areas, and they found nothing in violation. So that should move forward rather quickly. Thank you, Ms. Clerk.
The next item is the library contract. I had a call from Ms. Childers asking if the board had signed the new contract that was presented. I did, tell her again that from this point forward, any contracts that's submitted to this board, if there's revisions to be made, needs to be submitted when the contract is submitted again for signature. Instead of saying this needs to be re-signed, it wasn't signed on the right paper, it would be submitted as with revisions. And I think that most of the revisions, talking with Ms. Childers, were some that came down through the state, that they changed some things on them. So that's pretty much why the changes were made. And she did send in an explanation.
I received an email on that from Dick Reed. One thing about this, if the board recalls, is that we were sent stating that we hadn't signed the right signature sheet,
Right.
and lo and behold, we began to compare the 2 documents. There have been revisions made on the original document. So that's just, where it was at. And the board didn't feel that it could do that without having that explanation. So that's been done. So I'm glad that was done.
And we can vote on that in action on down if you want to. The next item is a monthly performance status report. This is on the CDBG grant number 10-C-2231. It's for March of 2013. The activity is the new senior center. I'm not sure if any of you have seen, they're breaking ground up there. Performance schedule is off. It said slightly behind schedule due to bad weather. The remedy to get back on schedule, construction will begin within a couple of weeks, and as of now expected to finish on time. This was prepared by Joan Stillwell, approved and emailed by Greg Cable, County Manager, to me to be presented tonight. Is there any questions on
Did
that?
Ms. Stillwell say when she's going to be coming back to see us, the board?
She did not.
We need to be asking
Okay.
about that. If we could maybe have a status report from her.
All right.
Because I know when we had the pre-construction meeting, were you there? The pre-construction meeting, after that day, it came to floods.
Yes.
That's why it's behind, without a doubt. But we need to be speaking to still about some of the things that I think Commissioner Holder has said, and I think we need to talk with her. Of course, we'll have our county manager, first of all, and then maybe follow up on a few things.
Okay. The transfer station, we have to have the boys who work out there, they have to be certified. And there is a class coming up, we're hosting it here in this county. I think 2 from Swain, 2 from Clay, and maybe 1 from Cherokee County are coming here. That would pay for a percentage of the host fee. But what she had sent me, Donna Turner from SWANA, is where they have to be certified, had requested that instead of waiting till next year for Harvey and Donnie to be recertified, to go ahead and let them be certified this time. It would save us quite a bit of money. But the only fallback is we will have to close the sanitation, but we could put one of our recycling boys at the gate just to tell everybody to use the green cans or the recycling. They could take that into one of the cans on that day. That will be on Thursday, the 24th, this coming week. I believe it's the 21st. But I didn't want to give her an okay until a board approval to close the actual site.
Give Ms. Clerk, I have 3 minutes to sit. That's what I mentioned.
So we can make a motion on that. We're having a termite problem. Oh, wait. Tri-County request to use the community building. Had a letter from Lisa Thompson. She wants to do Zumba classes. And she was just asking if it would be possible to waive the fee for this community building. I'm not sure exactly on the time, but it will be an actual class for Tri-County.
Do they charge for the class?
They do charge for the class.
Just ask.
One other thing, you see, I was reading that as well. If you have a charity event down here,
Fine.
go for it.
Yeah.
But, okay, that's one thing. But one of the recommendations I have coming from the public school sector is they have a wonderful program. And it's Mrs. Denise Moody. I would recommend that they contact her. They have the community schools initiative that's been in place for a long time where they can actually use the facilities.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So, and of course, they'll have, I would make that recommendation
Okay.
to this board.
I think that'd work fine for them.
Because, yeah, I really do. And, yeah. Okay.
Go on here. 5:58, 2 minutes. We're having a problem with termites at the courthouse. There at the glass doors, we are going to remove the wooden door that is at the old location of the old county manager's office. To drill underneath the sidewalks and to treat all the way around, it's $3,100, which is over our threshold of spending. But is that something y'all want to do? The mulch over time, I think, has caused the termites to come in, and it just needs to be taken care of. But we do have that in public buildings.
Is that a part of what the courthouse budget can do? Remember
I just have to talk to Tammy about it. You know where it was going?
No. Yeah, right. I mean, I know that the funds are there, okay. I would recommend you check that out and see if it will come out of that.
That way the taxpayers wouldn't have to pick up the tab on it.
But if not, or half, are y'all okay with that? If we move forward, either way, or after we talk with Tammy, or do you want me to bring it back?
I think if you've got a termite problem, you fix it.
Either way, it's gotta be fixed.
Yeah, I mean, that's all there is to it. The best way is to figure out the best way to pay for it.
Okay.
And if it qualifies under that, the facility, is it facility? fund?
Facility funds.
For the court system, and then if it can't, then we need to fix it. All right, we have 6 o'clock.
We do.
Okay, this time I'd like to call in order that we might have an open public hearing for acquisition of property. I'm going to consider ourselves open for that discussion in public hearing. All right, now go over the review. Is that all right with everybody about what we're talking about? In the last month or so, but I know it's been longer than a month, we've been conducting study and research into what's going to be the best process for us to go as a county with regard to the sanitation transfer station. We had looked very, very closely at the property up on Bear Creek. And the county has that piece of property, and I wanted to understand personally, and other board members here as well, as to why that property could not be permitted. After researching it, we found out that it could be permitted. Then after we went and through the process of the permitting process, which cost $5,000 for the permit, the county did spend $5,000. Then we looked at it from the standpoint of that property and about where the facilities would be located. We had the previous company, remind me again, McGill and Associates, had gone and done a preliminary plan about where it would be located. And what we end up with is marshland in the very front of the property, which is wetland, which you can't hardly use at all. And then you find yourself squeezed to the very back of the property. And what happened was, it was not going to work. With the facilities that we already have, and I've been, after talking with Becky over the history of the present sanitation department we spent $1.3 million on the present over here over the last 10 years. We did pay, and I think it's been contested, it's $10,000 to McGill to give us this information. So that's $15,000. Then, in the process of things, we approached, and it's permitted for me to say that person that it's not a bid, Mr. Herb Cody met with us, and that's why there's the special meetings, to have discussion with him about the possibility of buying the property of the existing transfer station. Mr. Cody made an offer on that piece of property with all the appearances that the county's already invested in, and I think it's approximately 9 acres of land. Is that right?
I think it's almost close to 11
11.
now, yes.
Okay, and that's another issue, is we getting the survey done.
Yes.
So, with that, a cost of $450,000 for the property has been proffered to us as a board. And in that, there's other, I want to say that there's other conditions with that says that we follow through with the commitment that this board has already made for the Wachovia building. And without getting into the real nuts and bolts of it, but what it comes down to is that we would be able to buy the property for $450,000 with the appearances for 9 to 11 acres of land. And also, we will go ahead and pay, instead of lease to buy on the Wachovia building, and then we would transact that business as well. And then Becky, at this point, can you explain how the finance on that works, please?
We have been contacted the local government commission, and first question was, well, if we get behind the 8 ball on timing with financing, will local government commission finance it either up front or after the acquisition is made? And I got an email back from Tim Ramaki, who is the Director of Debt Management for Local Government Commission, and he said that with our financial position being in the place it is now, that he does not see any problem with doing a long-term finance agreement with either property or both properties. It's just whichever way that we feel is the best physically sound methodology of doing the purchase. I do want to reiterate that in looking at the whole picture, to purchase the transfer station property is, as Mr. Edwards said, about $450,000. We already have our building, our scales, and all of our setup in place, which the county invested close to, right at $1 million, it's $1.1 million up there 10 years ago to place those buildings. That piece of property is under a long-term lease, and because it's under a long-term lease and those improvements are attached to the property under North Carolina law, And under the lease specifically states that any improvements that are made on that property stay with that property. So if we were to move the transfer station, we would lose the $1.1 million in investment. We would not be able to dismantle the building. We would not be able to dismantle the scales. So that $1.1 million would be gone. And then the other $200,000 is the rent that's already been paid on that property over the past 10 years. So basically, the county has already invested $1.3 million. To move the transfer station, the engineers came in with an estimate of $1.8 million to put a new building, to do all of the site preparation, to redo the road, to do it all. And so from just a finance standpoint, it just does not make a whole lot of sense to throw away $1.3 million and invest another $1.8 million on top of the $1.3 million. So I'm in full support of going out and going ahead and making the $450,000 purchase. And I'm also in full support of going ahead and honoring the commitment that was made last spring to Mr. Cody to purchase the sheriff's building. We had already talked to the Local Government Commission about the sheriff's building back in the spring, if you were in attendance at those meetings, and they again felt like that one of their conditions on any time you acquire real property, their first question is, what type of public use, what kind of public benefit will that property provide to the taxpayers? And we feel like with the location of the building on the bypass, you know, it's an obvious, to me, it's a no-brainer about the transfer station, because we were already set up out there, and it appears like some of the additional property we would be acquiring would be usable for recycling. We'd be able to go further with our recycling program. And then getting back to the sheriff's building, we feel like we've got a lot of good ideas on the table as far as what the best use of that property is. When I talked to the Local Government Commission last May, they were in full verbal support of it. They felt like that even whether we kept the sheriff's office there or we moved some other county offices to be on the bypass to make it more accessible to taxpayers, that would serve a good purpose. And so there's a lot of good ideas that we're throwing out on the table that we can present to local government to acquire the financing. So I feel like it's just a matter, and in addition, we have already talked to USDA. They're in support of helping the county in its acquisition of real property, which can provide some pretty good financing if that's the route we go. So I feel like it's just a matter of doing the paperwork, pushing the paper through, getting on the board meeting for Local Government Commission to get the financing approved. Long story told. I just wanted to let the board know, and the public especially, that as the finance officer, I feel like it's in the best interest to go ahead and make this acquisition.
And to add to this, I don't know, I know that a lot of us realize that that property being under lease has for the last 10 years restricted the county's ability to apply for grant money. You can't do it. How many trash trucks, how many other things, could have been acquired by the county through different programs down through, this 10 years, even back in the times were good. So with this, we'll be able to qualify as ownership, having ownership of this property to apply for grants that we're not able to do now. And then when you do the dollars and cents with it, and I was headstrong about the property up on Bear Creek, I'll just be honest with you about it. But when we got the initial bid of $1.8 million, or not bid, please take the word bid out of what I just said, proposal. It was an eye-opener. And Commissioner Holder, with his background in construction, and he's forgotten more than I've ever known about it. And then have him to see it and understand what would be involved in that. It might have been more than 1.8 million.
It would have been, a round ball figure would have been 2 million or better.
So-
We're saying size.
Right. And then too, there were other factors involved with the property that we received out of the issue of water. You know, having to drill a well. I mean, there's just a whole lot of things that would make that a place. But, you know, with the opportunity and Mr. Cody coming forward with this offer, you know, I'm in favor of doing that and meeting the obligation that we have with the Wachovia bill and to do that. So any other commissioners have any comment or discussion?
I feel like you did much on all that. What I'd like to see is too, in this process, is sell Bear Creek and get rid of it. It's been nothing but a headache. Put it up for bid and get rid of it. And then we don't have to worry about it no more. We don't have to spend $15,000 to see if it'd be suitable
Right.
and get rid of it. Because it's nothing, with all this expense, it's nothing to us.
Right.
There's nothing we can do with it. Maybe somebody can. And I'd say in this process, let's put it up for bid, use the money to,
It's still like to make a shooting range out of it.
Well, I would have that for another conversation.
We can use that as our debris removal site. Even though we're gonna purchase this other property, I would like to see this property be designated for the recycling transfer station. That property up there can be, and which the town had to use during our flooding, and have it as our quoted debris removal site, because we have to have it.
don't believe it can.
Yeah, it already is tagged as that in the state. We can put it up there.
There is, matter of fact, an effort now that you have to designate those areas
Yes.
again.
Yeah.
It's already got debris in it
Yeah.
right now.
It does. Okay, that's been
We
done.
will probably-
But you know what, Randy? You know, I look at that too, but, you know, I think that's probably another time. Because that's how many acres?
12.
12, and then how much of it's wetland? It's a lot more, it's a lot more than I thought it was. Huh?
I didn't make taking house to
Yeah.
it.
Well, I'll not tell you how much the last offer was.
What's the last offer?
Are y'all in public comment part yet?
We're getting there quick, Jackie. Can we have that discussion then about possible sale of that then later, Raymond?
Oh, we'll just,
Okay,
I'm tired of hearing and seeing.
yeah, I understand.
See,
All right, that's good. Yeah, Mr. Ayers, we go ahead then, board, go ahead and take a public comment. Jackie?
First of all, I'd like to say, I appreciate y'all fixing up the parking lot down here, it looks good. All the maintenance you do will pay off. Second of all, as a citizen, not as a town, nothing to do with my role in the town, I'm just as here as a citizen. I think that's a very good deal, the bank building and the property I bought was, from a real estate standpoint, I commend the Cody family for giving us that good a deal. I think they're giving us a very good deal, and I hope y'all buy it, because I think it'll be a good investment for the county. I think it's a very good decision. I think you're doing a good job if you get it. That's all my public comment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ayers. Anyone else?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Everybody I've heard hopes you buy.
Well, I've been to these other cities, and you go, try to find the sheriff's office, and it's like ours was, back in the hole. You can't find them if you needed them, and right there where it's at, it's in plain view, they know we've got one, and if they need something, they can pull right in there, and, I think that it's a great idea myself. We saved the money on the rent. We've done, put other people other places,
having said that, I'd like to ask Becky, we were in, when we first came on board, the previous 2 years, and we're now with the new board, we were paying $17,000 a month rent. And now,
Now with the Cody property, we're paying $14.50 a month, which that will go away. So the only thing, and really this is not this board, it's the Travel and Tourism Board. The only rent we're paying is through the Travel and Tourism Board, which they're on authority now, which is $400 a month.
and the lease,
And
on
And
the
that
walkovers.
That is paid by.
So that's that's one of the things that we,
That's covered by the office.
So you're talking about 1,900 to 17,000, what we was paying, is that what you said?
Yeah, and of course, we are, we're still paying I count the lease that we're paying on Wachovia, but in a way I don't, because that's being applied to the purchase price.
right,
We're paying that'll also go away, but that just rolls into the purchase, so we've made great strides to get out of the rental.
and I've got to echo what Jackie just said, Mr. Cody, really, I think he's really reached out.
Yeah.
I know that, and
Letting your rent, he's counting your rent as part of the payment.
yeah.
That's really
It's
bad.
not out there.
No,
So Mike, since you've been in, every bit of that money you paid in is going out on the purchase price.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here we are, and I wish we had more, but Ms. Russo, you're over there behind the camera, and I've got to ask you, what are your thoughts on it?
The biggest thing is to own it. If you own the land, then you're able to get the grants on it. So I believe that that's a good
Yes.
move. I also believe that, as Mr. Holder said, it is much more centrally located versus out on the edge of the county.
That does make sense. And you see, you've got converted me, if that's the word, on this recycling. If I've got my numbers right, you said 9,200 pounds in what period of time?
Davey just told me that this weekend that it's up to 9,200 pounds that they've gotten. It's maybe 3 weeks. This is the third week.
And that was with the open floor at the sanitation department, plus that was taken up there at the dumpsters.
And that also included, I have to say that included Santila.
Okay.
Also.
All right, but collectively, I mean, it's turning out to be a big deal. And I know that a lot of folks have stocked back. I did, my garage was nothing but cans. I finally got it cleaned out this weekend. And so, that effort, and I know that a lot of folks, it's a pain. But it's single stream. I'm just going to go ahead and say you can't beat it. The small property that I told you about, it's in Alexander County. You have to separate everything. And if you don't, they let you know. And I think it's a great thing. So, and two, when we went out, we went out and looked at the property. David Dodson, that works with Graves on the sanitation board, we all went out at that. And what Commissioner Holder says in that, there's a natural a piece of lay of the land there to be able to put a recycling trailer. What we're having to do right now is have to pull out the household garbage trailer and have to wash the floor down. Then we're having to close the sanitation down for household garbage so that all the recyclables can be collected. So hopefully that's going to go away.
I'm gonna hope that we get grants for this.
There you go. And that's going to make a big jump when they start putting in the grants to the places about being able to do that. So that's how I stand, and I know how I feel about it.
One thing I'd like to bring before this board. I think Herb would give us a tremendous market in it. And the county needs it. I think he done the county a service. What I'd like to see done is to put a plaque in the sheriff's building that I recognize him and Claudine for the contribution they've done to Gordon County in that sheriff's building.
And with the issue of this property on Strawberry Road.
We'll combine both of them together and put it on the plaque.
Well,
It's hanging down there.
And put the plaque in the sheriff's building.
well, I think we need to be mindful of that. But
At Baylor's out there, did you get all the land?
we got 9 to 11 acres right there where the old kiln was and all that, and there's that,
We got all that for the bank building, that,
no, you're talking about the
Did you
transfer.
get behind the bank building down there, I was great.
all the way back.
Oh, goodness.
That's what we understand, and that's got to be surveyed. You see, that's still something we have to do for sure. And anything, if the decision's made tonight to do the purchase, is
Here's
to make sure that it's
the
there.
actual layout of, yeah, if you want.
Yeah, how'd you get that down on the contract? It sounds good.
Yeah, nice little deal, right behind there, Jackson, right on the bed.
11.68 acres is what it came up to.
And I'll go ahead and broach this subject. There are folks that keep gardens, you know, for I don't know how many years. There've been folks that have had their gardens out in the back part of that property. And the way that this will be is they have a crop in the ground and they harvest that year's crop. And, you know, not put running way out from their garden. So it be understood that, you know, if the transaction, when that takes place, that those folks will, you know, have ample time to have a harvest of what they've planted. And then from then on, that it will not be used for that.
While we're on the same page, I'd like to touch one thing. We need to do some work on these fences. I believe we probably once or twice more or before this. And if you look at Bear Creek, you know, in Sweetwater, it's awful. Bear Creek's been run into.
And on Sawyer's Creek.
Sawyer's Creek's been run into. And, you know, if we're going to keep it, we need to keep it up. We need to go around the outside about 5 foot, cut the brush back, and keep it looking as good as possible. For an outside, I know what you can't do. Wonderfully, you can beat what's going on right now. And, it just take a few posts to straighten Sweetwater up.
Yeah.
And, if we had to get Larry Green to help, he's one to put most of that, and he's really good at it, and I'm sure that he would help.
They need to use plain. And, you know, and being visual, where you can see it on both sides. You know, it's a big thing right now. I know you've been after it since I've known you, about getting those things cleaned up around it. All right, is there any other public comment? I do believe if the pleasure of the board will be acting on this once it comes to the action items.
I got one question, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Stanley had a project a while back, and they come to us, the town, and ask us, railroad right about through there, they ask us about doing something close to it or around it or something. The town don't own that, do they? Some people come and tell us we do, some say no, we don't. Old Block said we did, so I figured he knew what was going
He
on.
said you did,
He said we did not.
there was no deeds made nowhere. That's the reason. Should have went
I've
back.
never heard any conversation about it.
I mean, they said from the band building, right there across the road from the old band building up there,
Right.
all the way to the Bayless property line, the town on that 60-foot old railroad.
Is that reverted?
That reverted back to Graham County Rural Development Authority. and
The
then
county.
That's what Dole Brock told me.
Yeah.
But all the deeds, when they had it surveyed, it says the town of Robbinsville.
I don't know if they were just doing that as the city, but in the research that we've been able to do, it all falls back into the Graham County Rural Authority that was operating at the time of the Railroad Commission, which no longer exists, so
They
it
did
reverts
it
back
back
to
to
the
county.
government. Yeah. And so there have been some quick claims made, which if you really wanted to push it, it would probably go back to the county. Because there is no clear titles.
No.
Right.
You can quit claiming somebody else.
The way they quit claim this was, they said if it adjoined their property and was their property at one time, then you could quit claim.
Going up to the level out of town,
Yeah.
that's, it went back to the landowners,
Yeah.
and they stopped the railroad. Boy, wish we still had it.
Make a great bike trip.
I just wondered about that.
Make a nice train track too.
We sure would.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna look into that just to make sure.
All right. I'd be interested in knowing that, Jack.
I'll let y'all know about that. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
I'm glad y'all fixed the sidewalk, so we can get already.
Hopefully that's gonna all get done. Okay then, any other public comment? The board's pleasure, we'll go ahead and come out of the public hearing and continue with our regular meeting. Thank you very much for your input. All right, Ms. Clark, I believe we got down to
Amendment to the personnel policy and pay plan. The pay plan has been submitted to the state personnel office for approval, so Manager Cable didn't really want that accepted tonight because there would be no use of us accepting it if the Office of State Personnel did not accept it.
Okay.
The actual amendment to my policy we can accept, and all that is taking out the 18 steps, and we were putting back in what relates to this policy, which came with a 1%. It was like on a 3% basis you could get, 1% on an excellent good evaluation, 1% on achievement or recognition, and 1% on per 5 years. So that would be the longevity that people had asked for. The part in there, unsatisfactory evaluations will result in not an increase, which those unsatisfactory evaluations will be discussed with the county manager and if needed with the county board to make sure that they are fair and accurate at all times. So they did want to make sure that was given. This will run on a budget year to year, and if a cost of living is done, it's noted that the steps, if they go past the last step, then they will be increased to follow the cost of living increases. So it will never bottom out, I guess as you can say. Removal of the gas, was there any questions on that? Sorry about that. We, I know if you recall in the fall, I said the gas tanks at the EMS building had to be removed, and there were violations. I think there was 12 violations of the reasoning why we couldn't have that up there. I did have quotes, and I think I put in your boxes, of another station that we need to look at in our next budget year. We could put it up there above the EMS building, straight across the street, to the left, I guess, of the new transit facility. The new station would look like this, diesel on one side, gas on the other. They just do a drive around, fill up, and leave. It would be protected by cameras, not only coming from the new transit facility, the new senior citizens facility, and the EMS facility. So that is something we need to really consider in our next upcoming budget, is this center.
Okay.
The gas cards
Yeah,
are a little bit, we have a control of the gas cards and then you don't. So in-house, our gas cards are seeming to run close to the same sometimes, but a little bit above.
It's about the same.
About the same. So we just need to look at what's the best option. We have to have gas and diesel on a reserve at all times, so we need to move the diesel tanks from the EMS facility. We can do that with our Tracos and I believe with our personnel. Having said that, we have a 5,000 gallon tank at the old Fort Hill plant. We do have a quote from a local man that will pump the actual diesel out of the tank that is left in there for $600. He'll take it out and remove it and dispose of it for $600. Now, removing the tank, we can do in-house with Donnie Orr with a Traco, and then we can refill with gravel and dirt, which was, David Hyde had spoken with Donnie on this. So I felt that was the better way to go with the removal instead of trying to contract that out or get proposals to move those tanks. If we have the ability